Welcome to Troubleshooting Innovation, a commercial baking podcast. Sponsored by Reading Bakery Systems, RBS, the world's leading manufacturer of automated systems for baked snack production, continuous mixing, and oven profiling. I'm your host, Joanie Spencer, Editor-in-Chief for the Commercial Baking Media Group, and I'm speaking with industry expert Dave Van Laar as we unpack all the pain points that come with innovation and product development and discover new ways to overcome them. In this episode, we will be discussing how to scale up from the lab to the line, and we'll talk about some tips on achieving a smooth handoff from R&D to operations. Hi, Dave.
Good morning, Joanie. That's hard to believe it's been a week already.
Right? So in the last episode, we touched a little bit on how R&D, marketing, and operations all need to sort of play nice together in the sandbox in order to streamline the innovation from concept to store shelves. So today, let's talk about some of those first steps in achieving that smooth handoff.
Sounds good. Where do you want to go with it?
All right, so let's talk about speed to market first, because consumer demand has really changed the speed to market concept. It's really shortened exponentially in the past few years, and especially in the past 12 months. So how is that changing the way a product moves through the development process and in getting to operations?
Well, let's think about just overall traditional sales marketing companies for cookies. We developed a product, we went in and sold it to a chain. We waited until we could get the shelf space. We put it on the trucks delivered it, and we tried to get pulled through advertising and push it through the stores. And that whole process, if we were fortunate, took months to do. Today, you and I can make a brownie and have it in someone's house tomorrow. So there's no question that disruptive is the key for what's happening. We can also use that obviously as branded companies, because the iconic brands are also what continue to drive the business.
Is it changing what branded companies are looking for when they are looking for a co-manufacturer, or how they're changing their internal operations?
I believe so. They're looking for much quicker response than we've been able to even do in the past. We know consumer trends more quickly now. We know what the consumers are buying almost immediately, and they're telling us with their dollars what they really want. Before, that whole game we went through was a guessing game. We tried to stay ahead of the consumer. We tried to stay ahead of the trends. We tried to uh, help produce those trends, make products that fit. I go back to fat free, for instance. The clamor was there for fat free 25 years ago when we were going all through all the fats and oils issues. So we all got into the fat free business. Well, the trouble is it didn't taste good and nobody bought it.
Right.
So we moved on. We'll get a quicker reaction to those things now. It does allow for a lot easier entry for new products. There's no question about that.
Do you think that this impacts the need or opportunity or even interest for branded companies to do more self-manufacturing?
I still believe that major companies are going to produce their own icon brands and be as efficient as they possibly can. Um, Oreos will always sell. Oreos will always be out there, and they'll be made on huge lines with very few people. And then the Mondelez will continue to make that efficient. When it comes down to a brand that's doing less than $1 million a year, it is the realm of the contract manufacturer to get that to market, I firmly believe.
So let's go back to what you said about this continuing need for new product and innovation. To streamline the whole process and to really get it going quickly and smoothly in operations, who needs to be at the table in those initial discussions? Traditionally, it's gone from marketing to R&D to operations. Have you seen any scenarios where operations is getting involved in the conversation sooner, or is R&D driving the innovation more than they used to?
When I'm involved, I'm in the process at the beginning. And I believe that needs to happen everywhere. When you're looking at product innovation, product ideation, certainly that's marketing, sales, R&D. If they're marketing research departments, they're still involved. So they're trying to pick up the trends with senior management. So that group is getting together and coming up with different types of products. I was always fortunate with the major branded companies to be a part of that process also, so I could see what they were thinking about to help guide them a little bit towards something we could do. So that's going to happen in that realm no matter what. But when we go to the plant, when we go to market, everybody needs to be involved. And I believe this team needs to be assembled as soon as possible, as soon as there's a decision to made to move to get to market. And that's quality control. We need to establish shelf life. We have to establish quality parameters. Engineering needs to get involved. Will our equipment do this? Do we need to? Does it even exist today? That's happened pretty regularly too.
Yeah.
The product was designed and there was no equipment available to make it. What's the capex going to be? Who's our vendor going to be? And we all that's engineering needs to be involved because when you look at their lead times, they're looking at 12 to 18 months on equipment if it's out of the box. Um, Operations certainly needs to think about commercialization in the plant. They need to assist, to me, assist engineering with the design. Where does it fit in my plant? How many people will it take to run? What kind of training do I need for this type of equipment? And what's the expectation of the product and the equipment? We're going to bring new technology into a plant. As a plant manager, I need to be ready to train people to do that. Um, Purchasing is often forgotten in this whole process also, but R&D loves exotic ingredients, and I've talked about that pretty regularly. The Madagascar vanilla that's available every other year. Um, so it's a great product, but can we commercialize this? So purchasing needs to think about where they source it and also start to get pricing on it. One piece that in the big companies I found was sometimes neglected was the finance piece. After the project was all put together, the numbers were all crunched. Then they went to finance, went to the CFO, and said, "Here's what we need to spend." After being burned a couple of times, I learned that if I go to the CFO right away and say, "This is kind of what they're looking at doing," he did not get blindsided in a meeting with the corporate staff on, here's a project for $20 million, please sign it. Um, we were also able to get pre-spending. A lot of these require, larger companies. We write a project, but then we need to spend before the project is approved. So that pre-spending can be approved by contact with the finance people. Nobody likes to be surprised, and I think everybody wants to be a part of that team. They want to help it be successful, but they're not always given the opportunity. Packaging engineering, how's it going to go on the store shelf? Does it sit this way? Does it sit that way? Is there modified atmosphere packaging required? What type of barriers do we need? What modifications do we need to equipment? Is this a gable top? Is it resealable? Is it to show the product or to hide the product? And all the while, we have sales itching for that new product. I mean, they love new products. They love to take new products to their buyers and show them how innovative we are. But then they need to get it into the stores. And then they also have to worry, if I put this new product in the market, will my salespeople lose focus on some of the other primary drivers? So, we don't want them to lose focus on the real staples just because a new product is out there. Um, and lastly, with this whole thing is logistics. Are there special handling characteristics? I was involved with a project that had pure chocolate and cookies. Well, sounds like a great idea. And even Pepperidge Farm had a summer type of product and a winter type of product. When you think about that's great in the Northeast, but what about Florida? What about Arizona? What about California? So you have to consider the distribution cycle. We've also had to consider how we shipped things. If we shipped it across the Rocky Mountains, it was subject to lower pressure, and we had cartons and bags pop open going through there. So, that's the list of kind of people that are involved. I know some companies are saying, "Well, I don't have all those people. I don't have all those resources. I wish I did." My comment to you is, no, you don't. You don't wish you had all those people. You need to have those resources. You need to have those functions. But if those are combined into maybe 4 or 5 people, it really helps you be more flexible. In a larger company, we're talking about departments for packaging engineering, departments for QA. On a smaller operation, we're talking about 4 or 5 people sitting around. So they need to consider all these functions, but they're a lot more nimble because they make the decision right there at the table
Yeah.
and they move forward.
So it's more schools of thought than it is actual individuals.
Absolutely. It's the function. The function needs to happen.
Okay. I was visiting with a baker not too long ago who was telling me he was the CEO of the bakery, and he was telling me how his director of operations was really good at doing his homework before he came to him with that request for the investment. And he would have the conversations and then say, okay, here's the scenario of what will happen if we do invest in this equipment. Here's what will happen if we don't. And that seemed to make things run a lot more smoothly. And they also had someone who was more or less a centrifuge to keep all of those schools of thought at the table and focused on the same goal. So, what are your thoughts on who does that centrifuge need to be to keep everybody aligned in what the goal is?
Please don't tell me who those people are, because I'd probably go after them and have them work with me. Those are the type of people we need, obviously. Um, Nobody likes surprises. And the biggest thing I've seen through the 40 plus years of this that catches everybody is the surprises. I forgot this, I forgot that piece. And if somebody, a CEO, has a person like that, running the interference for them, it's crucial. There is a simple thing, Joni, like a project justification, just to figure what the cost of the project is and what the benefits are. And I've gone out and worked with companies just to help engineers understand that process. It's amazing how many people don't get that. They come in with phony justifications. They come in with real soft numbers instead of solid numbers, and then the CEO has to do the evaluation himself or herself. So, to have somebody that's doing that is really important.
This episode is brought to you by Reading Bakery Systems, your trusted partner for innovative bakery and snack solutions. For RBS, innovation is in its DNA, and that's embodied in the Science and Innovation Center, where the RBS team partners with you to test and validate new and improved snack products and processes. The center includes all the process equipment needed for full-scale production conditions, and that's the best way to ensure innovative manufacturing. Successful snacks start at RBS. Learn more at readingbakery.com. Okay, I'm sitting here thinking about, and I was thinking about this morning. You're talking about the vanilla sourced from Madagascar that's only available every other year, only when the ships are sailing at night when the moon is waning. So I was kind of thinking about that example and really curious to pick your brain on what you've seen as far as worst case scenarios in those types of situations, but also the best case scenarios where all of the pieces of the puzzle just really came together for a smooth and successful product launch. So can you kind of share some of those stories?
Sure. When we were doing a project way back when, we were buying most of the macadamia nuts coming out of Hawaii that did not go into direct packaging into retail. That was somewhat of a limiting factor. If the crop was affected, if shipping was affected, that the macadamia nut had to be in there, and that could be quite disruptive. Uh, when we were experiencing the sugar issues years ago, and we were trying to source some offshore sugar, that was extremely difficult for us. Some things we've been able to substitute to change when we get that, but when it gets more specific and these newer ingredients are more specific, it becomes even more difficult to to have product available there when you need it. One project that really stands in my mind is when I was with the President Baking Company. We developed Murray Sugar Free. The questions are: does it meet the claims of the product? Will it do what it says it will do? Will it hurt anyone if they have a sugar issue? How do we make it taste good? How do we source the sugar alcohols that we need, and which ones will stand up in the oven? And that was a group project from the very beginning. And that was in the 90s, I think, sometime mid 90s. And that product is still out there, and I believe it's still leading the market in the sugar-free arena. So
Wow.
everybody was brought together to make that happen. It was a relatively smaller group, and we did it with some exotic ingredients, but we did it right, and it's still out there.
Wow. And I was wondering with those really specialized and exotic ingredients that consumers seem to be demanding a little bit more of now, I was wondering, does it have staying power? So you answered my question.
Yeah, and really, when we were back then, we were trying to determine which of the sugar substitutes made sense. First of all, which ones were stable in the oven. That was an issue that we had to resolve quickly because vendors made claims that really didn't hold up. So,
Mhm.
we had, and then the other thing was the effect that the sugar alcohols have on the system. And did we need a claim on there to say that if you eat too many of those cookies, you'll have to visit the bathroom? And so I asked the R&D people. I said, "Well, what, according to the rules, how many cookies would they eat to meet that claim?" And they said the whole package. I said, "Well, then leave it off the package because they deserve to go to the bathroom if they've eaten the whole package."
Listen, I gave up treats for Lent, and so Sunday afternoon I was at risk of eating an entire package of cookies. Some of us need that claim.
We binge, don't we?
We do. So what about a worst case scenario? Do you have any cautionary tales?
It hasn't always worked, Joni. There have been certainly difficulties. As a contract manufacturer, we were given a product that had no flour in it. It was a bar product held together primarily with liquid sugars, and it was baked through the oven somewhat, but it was not something that anybody had done before. We were not part of the development process of the product. A major sales marketing company developed it. It was right on. It was the right thing to do, but they had no idea how to make it. So they handed it to us. It was not the right application for the equipment. It would have been better suited for other equipment. However, the pieces they needed, we had all the pieces. So they could have extruded the product better somewhere else, but they would not have been able to bake it somewhere else. They could have baked it somewhere else, but they would not have been able to package it somewhere else. So we had close to what it would take, and on paper it would work. But when we started to make this product, it took forever to load the mixer because there were no bulk ingredients. We were making 3,000 pound batches. So we had to shovel everything in by hand. This thing stuff was so thick we had to scrape the dough out of the mixture with two people into the trove.
Wow.
The depositor kept breaking chains. We finally had the equipment supplier come in and look at the stress on the hopper on the depositor, and they just couldn't believe it, how much stress was on that steel. So they had to beef that up. The product stuck to the band, it stuck to the guillotine. Extra cooling was needed after we started. Probably the roughest, but I might add, was the most successful startup that we've had on something. all in all, because as a contract manufacturer, that was the only product that was, when I got there in '01,
Huh.
it was the only product that we were making in '01 that we were still making in 2016. But there are many other ones that have not gone that well. There are many other ones that, despite um, all the precautions, we had a simple thing as a packaging machine at Pepperidge. We have the famous gable top bag. Was made by a piece of equipment that cost a lot of money, and everyone wanted to try to mimic that with a much cheaper machine, a much more available machine. And we bought probably two or three different types of machines to try that, and they all sat in the junk pile because none of them worked.
Wow. So that story that you told about the bars, is that sort of the cross that a co-manufacturer has to bear? Are they often the ones like if a branded company is like, "Well, we can't figure out how to make this, so we're just going to pass it to you."
That has been the success of many, many contract manufacturers. Mini sandwich cookies. I know someone decided that that would be a great product. They invented the equipment themselves to do that. Um, Other products, we did some where I was where we thought it would be a great idea. We put a production line together to do it, and then we actually sold that capacity. But most of the time in those, the innovation in bringing into production comes a lot more quickly on a smaller scale operation. Um, we we do a lot if we do that by hand. That bar we were first talking about, there was, when we first did it, there we did not have a way to get it from the wrapping machines to the cartoner. It was just we put them into tubs and then carried them over. Well, we were making 800 bars a minute, so that really wasn't going to work. But it gave us the flexibility to get a test on it. We added conveyors very quickly and start to build up that line. But that line changed over the years to accommodate automation and to get the price down. In fact, that was one where the price we started at with this consumer went down probably 25% from when we started. After 2 years, we took the price down for them about 25% because we were able to economize in so many areas. And our customers love it when you come with a price decrease.
You got that right. So, when developing a new product, we've talked a lot about all of these moving parts and all of these schools of thoughts and fundamentals that have to be considered. So, something's going to get missed. What's the one or two things that a baker really needs to be sure to remember before firing up that line and taking a product into production? And then how far into the future do bakers need to be thinking when they're developing a new product?
The first thing and the most important thing is can I make it on the equipment that I have? Um, are minor modifications needed? Are huge capital investments involved? If so, what is that capex, and where do I go to get that? Um, with this bar product, there was really no alternative. We had to make the equipment we were using. We had to make it work. So the project, I mean, it was one small piece of the process, but if that didn't work, nothing worked. So I'm thinking about production as R&D is showing me prototypes. If they show me something that's specific, and this has happened, someone will show them a piece of equipment and they'll design a product to meet that specific piece of equipment. Well, if we don't have that equipment, we can't make it like that. There are simple products to make and there are very complicated products. When we went through the soft cookie wars back when, and we went through some filled products, there was a lot of specialized equipment that was out there. Most of that equipment is gone now because of the inefficiencies of running it. But I'm thinking about, as a CEO or as a project manager, I'm thinking about the nuances of putting that on the line as it's being developed. And I think that's most crucial. The other thing I'm thinking about regularly is resources. What resources do I have to make this happen? Do I need to get my equipment vendors involved? And do I need to get them involved now? How do I partner with those vendors? How do I get them into the process early on so they know what to expect, and they can also offer suggestions going forward. I think those are the two biggest things that knowing how to make it and knowing who it's going to take to make it.
Yeah, and when we did our roundtable during EBA Connecting Experts, we did talk about that a little bit with Sean Moy at Reading Bakery Systems, how they can get involved with a product innovation very early in the process at their technical center. So I think it is important for bakers to consider speaking with their equipment vendors, current or potential, very early in the process. Would you agree with that?
And stay involved with them. Absolutely talk with them, but stay involved with them. See what things they can do. Because sometimes equipment may drive innovation. I hate to think that it just always has to keep up with it. And they're looking to do that too. Sean and Redding and the other companies that are out there, they're paying attention to trends. They're looking at what's going on and they're trying to figure out how to stay ahead also, just as we are with the products.
Yeah, yeah. And, on that note, how do bakers reconcile in their minds when they're looking at capital investments, the project and products that are yet to be conceived?
Joni, I'm real fortunate. Back in 1982, I bought a crystal ball, and it has worked so well for me over the years that
Did I just ask the impossible question?
no, because it's what we live with. It's an excellent question, a question that we all have always struggled with. Give you a couple of examples. I mentioned the bar that we made, and we stayed very flexible in the beginning. With contract manufacturers, that's often the case. Don't over automate it in the beginning because then you lock yourself into something. People are a lot more flexible at times than machines, but automation is a lot more preferred than people. So, as you find out what the process is going to do, the biggest thing to me is deciding what you want to be. What are you? If you're a cracker manufacturer, you don't put in a cookie line. That's pretty obvious.
Hmm.
But if you're going to do chocolate cookies, you need to be prepared to do chocolate. And is it going to be, compound or real chocolate? So knowing the direction of the company is certainly crucial towards those things. I was involved with a project where we spent millions for a line that had no product committed to it. Everybody knew it was the right thing to do. They knew it was on trend. And it's like the old baseball field, you build it, they will come. But within 6 months, somebody did come, and it turned out to be a great product. But it's a gamble. It's a huge gamble. I know other companies that have gone on even more substance and have gone out of business when that product did not come through. So it's difficult. It's difficult to know how to put it out there, but knowing the direction, and someone in the organization has to have that strategic objective, know what they're going to do. And then at times I've wondered what what they're thinking, but it always turned out they were a lot smarter than I was, so I just followed orders.
It seems like there is that fine line that you have to walk when trying to disrupt and innovate in this marketplace, and how much risk you're willing to take and still be cautious in how much you invest to take that risk, right?
Absolutely no question. Way back when in 1981, I was an industrial engineer at Pepperidge Farm, and of course the IEs are all gone, but we were the quote efficiency experts. And one of the projects that I put on the profit improvement plan was to help the ladies and men that put the caps on the cookies on Milanos. So they took the chocolated piece and by hand put it on the other piece. Um, many a day. It took 12 people to do that on the line. And then it took 12 people to put them in those fancy little cups that they went into. And the machine that placed the cups into the bags was $1 million, and the machine that made the bags was $1 million. Now this is back in the '80s, so we looked for a way to, be able to put those 24 people somewhere else. It was ripe for automation, but nothing existed for that. And I carried that project on my profit improvement plan for years and years and years. Finally, robots with vision became available, and we were able to do that, and not lose the handmade look. It would show the chocolate, but it also put little fingerprints on if we wanted it to also to show that people had touched it. So, the technology has got to be there. It's got to be there on time, and it's got to be available.
Yeah, definitely. And that's actually a good segue to tease next week's topic, because we are going to talk about how that technology and automation is making life easier for bakers, especially these young bakers, but also it's creating this gap of the knowledge transfer. So next week we can talk about, even though we have technology and robotics to make the process easier, we'll be able to talk about the actual knowledge of the bakery process that can't be lost in order to keep these products moving forward.
One of my favorite subjects, Joanie.
I cannot wait. All right, Dave. Well, those are all my questions for this week. And I thank you so much for your time and your insight once again. I look forward to discussing the knowledge transfer next week. If any of our listeners have any questions for you on our final episode, episode 6, we're going to give you an opportunity to answer those listener questions. So if any of our listeners have questions for Dave, they can reach out to us at info@avantfoodmedia.com. Dave, I will talk to you next week.
Until next week, Joanie.
Thank you for listening to the Troubleshooting Innovation podcast. And a special thank you to our sponsor, Reading Bakery Systems. For more information on RBS and its industry-leading baked snack solutions, visit readingbakery.com.